Hello everyone, my name is Hyunna. I am 15 years old and I'm a high school student. I have lived under the banner of a happy family for many years, and I think I can't stand it anymore. Talking about my family, outsiders can hardly think that I'm living in a family with violence because my father cleverly painted a beautiful picture of a complete home. That picture has three people. My father was successful as an entrepreneur, my mother was a good housewife, and I was a good hardworking daughter. The couple loved one another wholeheartedly and raised the child together. Yes, that is what everyone sees. It is also the biggest dream of my life, but ironically, half of the truth has been buried. Half the pain I suffer without them knowing it. My father is paternalistic and is extremely arbitrary with his wife. Previously, my mother said that my father was very gentle and kind, but until he struggled in the midst of the storm of work, career, and money, he claimed to be the one who brought money home to support his family, so that he had the right to dictate his wife. Dad thought my mother was no different from being a freeloader, which is to stay at home and spend her money. My only existence in 15 years made my father hate my mother even more. He needed a son to continue the lineage, but his wife couldn't have another son. My mother is not in good health, and she doesn't want to stay home to listen to those heavy words from my father. But due to the years off at home to give birth, look after me, and worry about many things, while my father started a business, she gradually lost the time and the expertise to return to her previous work. But even if she wants to do a part-time job to be freed from the frustration at home, it is not possible, because my father thinks that it will lose the face of the breadwinner of the family like him. Mom also asked for divorce many times, but my father refused. He tore the divorce paper and even refused to go to the conciliation court when the court invited him in person. I really don't understand my father. He doesn't love his wife, but wanted to monopolize my mother. My father almost created the cover of a perfect man in the eyes of others, but he behaved in the opposite way towards my mother. The point that made me hate my father the most was that he gave himself the thought that the amount of money he gave to my mother was more than enough to take care of the house and let her buy other things. Understandably, since Dad never took care of his own family, nor spent everything on his own, he didn't know that Mom never bought expensive clothes, never spent things in an extravagant way. Year after year passed by, and she didn't have any more skincare products or expensive cosmetics. My mother gives the best things for me, and also meets the needs of the living conditions that my father needed. Mother's life completely depends on the mood of my father. If that day he win a great construction project, which makes my father happy, the meal will take place quietly and gently. But if that day Dad didn't win the bid or simply had a bad day, like got talked to and annoyed by friends, he would put his anger on my mother. When Mom talks to him, he would get angry and yell at her, "Don't bother me." And as a habit, the brute slap on my mother's face is a way for him to deal with his anger. I had to live in silence and was haunted by my parents' argument and my dad's cruelty. I still remember the time when Dad drank tea while thinking about the idea of building a project. Mom coincidentally asked Dad what he wanted to eat that day, and her questions made him forget the idea that had come up in his head. He got into an anger that he tipped the teapot on the table, causing my mother injured. My mother was blistered by hot tea water. The fragments of the teapot made her body bleed, but my father didn't take her to the hospital. He didn't give any concern about if my mother still lived or died, stood looking at her with an expression like he hadn't calmed down yet, mumbled curses and went up to the living room. Luckily, when I heard the sound, I hurriedly came downstairs and took my mother to the hospital in time. But it was nothing compared to this time. My obnoxious father pushed things too far. I couldn't stand it any longer. Lately, my father did a big contract with a material supplying company. The night before, he came home late and left his contract documents in a large pile of newspaper in the living room. The next morning, my father panicked to look for a contract, but it was nowhere to be found. He believed that my mother had lost his important documents while cleaning up. My father got into a rage for no reason, smashing all the things in sight and throwing a large porcelain vase at my mother. Everything was no longer under control. I went home from school and didn't see my mother, so I asked, and he lied that my mother was visiting my grandparents. But I was skeptical and knew that wasn't the truth. My mother always took me with her each time she visits my grandparents. Moreover, the house was like a battlefield, full of broken furniture and messy things. More horribly, I noticed the bloodstains even though the floor had been thoroughly cleaned. I frantically pictured that there must have been a fight between the two of them, in which my mother was the victim. I asked the operator to check the history of home phone calls to find out that the last call was to the General Hospital. I immediately rushed to the hospital. Looking at my mother in the recovery room, I was extremely upset. It's not wrong to say that the happiness of a woman in marriage depending on the husband. And it's too bad that my mother had met such a violent husband like my father. Seeing me, my mother hugged me and cried. She told me she was okay and I shouldn't be too worried. But my mother could endure it and I could not. I had to accuse my father, accusing the violent father himself to free my mother. I don't need a family full of parents, but I'm not happy. My mother deserved a better life. I picked up the phone and pressed the police phone number. I had to tell them the truth immediately. Am I right to do that? Please give me some advices and give me some restraints.